Hi friends, my name is Courtney and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a book review for The Lost Apothecary. So The Lost Apothecary is an adult novel. It is historical fiction / literary general fiction, contemporary fiction. And it's a novel that I've seen talked about. I was interested in a way where it didn't make it onto my 400 book list of library books that I want to borrow someday. But it was like something that was casually on my radar. Something I had heard about, was interested in checking out, and then ultimately decided to check out and read for another video challenge. So with my uploading, I don't know if my Goodreads video will be out before this. This is a little sneak peek. I'm working on a Goodreads themed video, and this was one of the books that I picked because of Goodreads. So The Lost Apothecary is, I wouldn't say highly acclaimed, but it is a very well loved book. It is a very well read book. It is very popular. I believe it has been a Barnes & Noble monthly pick at one point. I know the author's second book definitely was. So I feel like it's kind of in the same realm as a Taylor Jenkins read. It's very popular with general readers, general audiences, but it isn't necessarily highly acclaimed. So to get into what this book is about, we are following three different perspectives. Our kind of main perspective, our first perspective that we get is Caroline. She is a woman who is in her mid-30s, I believe. She is on this trip to London. She has just found out that her husband of 10 years has been cheating on her, and she decides to go on this trip to London anyway. And she has always loved history, she's always loved books, and she's just gonna enjoy this trip and kind of contemplate what she wants to do about her marriage. And so walking around the city in the first couple hours since being there, she gets hooked into this adventure of mudlarking. And if you don't know what mudlarking is, it's like this thing where you go down to rivers that get a lot of, I won't want to call it pollution, but there's certain rivers that have had things thrown in them over the years, and mudlarking is like you dig through the mud. It has to be in certain rivers, I believe, but you dig through the mud and you're able to find artifacts from different time periods. The London Thames is most especially known for this because it has stuff from ancient Roman times, but also you can get mudlarking things from the 18th, 19th century. I'm going too much into the mudlarking. I am a fan of mudlarking. I want to do it. But if you've never heard of mudlarking, look up some YouTube videos for it, because I promise it will be your next weird niche thing that you could just watch hours of content for. I find it entertaining, but this book isn't really about the mudlarking. Anyway, Caroline, she goes mudlarking, she finds this bottle, she's intrigued by it, and she decides to try and discover the mystery. And along the way, we are entering into two other perspectives. We have Eliza, who is a young maid, and her mistress is having her do this task being murder. Spoiler alert. And then we have Nella, who is this apothecary who is interacting with Eliza and has been secretly helping women kill off either husbands or men that have wronged them. I want to say a lot of the marketing is ooh, this serial killer, this, psychotic Jack the Ripper type woman. It seems like a lot of people were confused and thought they were getting a serial killer thing, so it must have been the marketing that kind of gave this kind of feeling to people, but it's not that. It's much more about women being in difficult positions and not having any choices and going to Nella as her last resort. And Nella is in a difficult economic position and feels she has no other choice, but also has some emotional reasons why she's helping these women kill off harmful men in their lives. So both Eliza and Nella are interacting with each other. They are in the same timeline of 1790, and then it's Caroline kind of finding pieces of their past and kind of piecing together this historical story of them. So there's a lot of things that I would like in this. It's literary fiction with a little bit of historical, a little bit of intrigue and mystery. It's timelines interlapsing and paralleling each other. It's a lot of interesting coincidences that are leading these characters to kind of these parallel interactions. But unfortunately for me, this book was hot garbage. And I'm going to be getting into a spoiler-free review of why I came to this conclusion or why I had these feelings. Interesting about The Lost Apothecary is it seems to be a fan favorite among general fiction, historical fiction readers. People are just enjoying it. It's kind of in Goodreads Hall of Fame status. It was a 2024 favorite read. It's been around. It's popular with the general reader crowds. I gave this book the tagline of "Your mom would probably love this book." Just a general fiction reader that doesn't read that many books in a year, who likes historical fiction, who likes general fiction, who enjoys is a good Hallmark movie or a Lifetime movie. It just kind of fits that vibe of like not being a great book, not being super different from anything else, but not necessarily awful for the general readers. It's pretty straightforward. It's a pretty fast read. I found myself, even though I wasn't enjoying the book that much, I found myself very compelled to there was no figuring out, but to read and continue and to see what happens. There is a readability here that I think appeals to a mass general audience of people that are not the biggest historical fiction readers, that are not the biggest mystery thriller readers, that are not the biggest readers in general. And that's not a diss. Those books have their place. They're just not for me personally. Because I think that's the biggest problem with this book is it felt very generic and just very unnuanced. So nuanced, what do I mean? The characters are just very straightforward. They're very flat. They're very one note. They have their one thing that they're dealing with, and that's kind of it. Caroline especially, there is no nuance in her story. She lays everything out about her divorce, about what's happening with her husband, pretty much in the first chapter, and it returns to it, and it gets very repetitive because it just repeats and repeats the same thing that I already know about her and about that relationship over and over and over again. There's no sense of discovery with that story. We're laid everything out in the first chapter again, and it just gets very repetitive, and there's no sense of depth to anything. The repetitiveness is kind of a constant problem in this book. Every chapter, we're kind of repeating the same story beats. We've already learned about the historical timeline past by the time Caroline learns something. And again, it's like every chapter we return to each character, their kind of story beats are kind of repeated over and over again as if I would have forgotten what I just had read in the previous chapter. So there's a repetitive nature to the storycraft, repetitive writing style, just a lot of hand-holding, like I would forget stuff about these characters. And again, they're very one note, they're very unnuanced, and it made for a very unnuanced story where it didn't feel like the author really trusted me to know what was happening. For a book that's a mystery thriller that has like mystery elements, intrigue elements, it's really weird to just kind of be told everything flat out and to have no sense of discovery. The other big thing is that, there's parallels between the characters, there's coincidences that are happening in Caroline's story so that she can put together all of the different clues. A lot of times I tend to really like these coincidences. It's just kind of fun when things kind of match up like that. I know a lot of people don't enjoy them, and for once in my life I was one of those people. I just felt like it was too coincidental. It wasn't enough of Caroline really struggling to figure things out. It felt very easy, and it made a lot of things feel very unearned. And this played off a lot in the end of the book because there's this build up to this big dramatic plot twist, but it ultimately didn't feel like there was a lot of payoff for the characters because we kind of already knew everything about them. We could kind of already guess what had happened with them, and instead of this like fun piecing together of everything that we've learned, it's just kind of a dramatic plot twist for the sake of a dramatic plot twist without, again, any kind of payoff or build up to that plot twist. And the last thing that really I did not enjoy in this book that a lot of other readers also did not enjoy was that the theme of motherhood in here. I think that's a fine theme. It makes sense, especially with Caroline, because she thinks that she might be pregnant. And then it makes sense because Nellie especially is a character that wants to continue her mother's legacy. So I think it makes sense for the characters. I think it makes sense for the overall theme. And I like how the theme like makes the characters parallel each other in the different timelines. But the problem is that it gets a little weird. So basically every female perspective and most of the named female characters that we meet somehow connected to pregnancy, motherhood, pretty much only thinking about that, and paired with the already like kind of flatness of the characters, it just makes for this really like kind of icky feeling, at least for me personally, and that comes down to a couple things. So this is potentially the only spoilers for this video, but I felt like it was important to talk about. So Nellie is one of the characters. She cannot get pregnant and she has had miscarriages in the past, and so obviously she's in the past timeline, so she dies, and we see her death in this book. It's supposed to be like a satisfying ending for her, but she was never able to rectify her pregnancy and her miscarriages, and she's the character that is seen as like the serial killer-esque character because she is helping these women off these men, and so there's a lot of her in her brain comparing her morality with her miscarriages, and the text doesn't really do anything to kind of have her speak back against this. And with her being a character that we see die on page connected to her like health and her miscarriages and her unsavory past, because all the characters care so much about pregnancy and so much about being mothers, it just makes for a really unsavory parallel where you're having the characters that are obtaining motherhood being seen in this overall good light. They are having satisfactory endings to their stories as the character that is not going to have a pregnancy pregnancy or motherhood is the one that's suffering the most. And I don't like that. I don't like that. And maybe if the text was a little more nuanced, it did a little bit more with this theme. There was more about Nellie feeling like she passed on her legacy, then maybe it wouldn't have had this problem. There's a little bit of connecting morality with the inability to have children, which I don't like at all. So that's like the biggest misstep in this novel. The only area where it felt just kind of gross. But overall, the biggest issues with this novel is that it has that repetitive language. The characters feel very flat. There's not really any sense of intrigue, and you're just kind of told everything. I know it's a rule that not everybody agrees with in the writing sphere. Show, don't tell, but there is a place for it. There's a place to have explanations in books, to kind of tell you everything, to give you world building. I feel like the rule still stands, and for me personally, it's a thing that I like. I like a book to show me things instead of just telling me everything. And this book, because it's a mystery, because it has intrigue, because it has all these characters that are paralleling each other and thinking about their pasts, this is where I would want kind of a show don't tell. That would have added a lot of nuance if we were slowly discovering these characters' stories versus getting just told everything flat. If, like me, you are a very big show don't tell kind of reader, you're not going to enjoy this. But like, if you're looking for just something fun, something to take your mind off things, I feel like there is an escapist quality in this book. There is a fast-paced nature to this book that will have you flipping the pages and reading very quickly. There is something here to be enjoyed. There is something here that people are enjoying. That's why it's so widely popular. But for me personally, it just kind of missed a lot of notes. It just could have done more. It could have been more fleshed out, could have been more nuanced, could have had more mystery, more intrigue. It could have had better craft. And so for me, it's a 2 out of 5 star. It just really didn't do much for me. And it is a book I could recommend to people, but I personally would not recommend. Like, I could find the reader for this. If I was selling books in a bookstore, I feel like it would be very easy to recommend this to people. I personally wouldn't recommend it to people because it just wasn't something that I would vet as a good book. In my personal opinion of writing craft, it's like one of the worst books that I've read recently. But that's kind of my thoughts and opinions. I hope if you are someone that was looking for this type of book, that this review could help you decide, yes, this is for me. If you were interested in this book and this helped you in any way decide if this is not your thing, I'm glad I could do so. But it was so widely popular, I felt like I had to do a standalone review on this, even though I'm going to be talking about it in another video, just because I had pretty strong opinions on it. If you are looking for a book with intrigue and mystery and a little bit of dabbling in apothecary arts, I would recommend The Apothecary Diaries. It's a manga and it is also an anime show. They're not in any way similar. I don't feel like their audiences are similar, but that gave me everything that I wanted from that kind of mystery, intrigue with apothecary art. That gave me what I wanted versus this book, which was 1, not well crafted, and 2, just didn't have that apothecaryness to it. So yeah, that's what I would recommend. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys later, and happy reading!